Hey, I want to make a little video here today to kind of follow up on the video I made earlier about how the NRA had nothing to do really with the victory in Washington over Initiative 1639. Now, in that video, I'm having a lot of the NRA cucks come in there and be like, oh, the NRA did almost everything. They were the one that filed the first lawsuit and they raised more money than everybody else combined and they spent all the money to fight it. And I just want to take a moment here to point out that they're totally wrong. They're using the report from the initiative, which on initiatives in our state, we have to say who backed both sides and how much they raised and how much they spent. So they're using that report, but they don't seem to understand it. I don't know if NRA cucks just can't read or they can't do math. So I want to explain that to them today. And I also want to explain to them the fact that no, the NRA did not fight the lawsuit. The NRA did not file the first case. If you look here at the report that came back from the actual Second Amendment Foundation here, which were the ones that actually, through one of their members, as a private citizen, fought the fight. And this says right here, Alan Gottlieb, founder and executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation, said the judge ruled properly and he is hopeful that the state Supreme Court will uphold the decision. Gottlieb filed one of two lawsuits against the Initiative 1639 as a private citizen and a Washington state voter. A second similar lawsuit, in fact, it was actually pretty much just a duplicate that they just duplicated, lawsuit was filed by the National Rifle Association and Spokane resident Robin Ball. The ruling also applied to that lawsuit. This is telling you right here that the lawsuit that was heard was the one by Gottlieb. That's the one that actually made its way to the court, and that's the one that got ruled on. The second lawsuit, which was filed by the NRA, that ruling applies to it also because it's a duplicate, pretty much identical lawsuit. So hopefully that clears up the idea that some people had that the NRA is the one that went to court and actually fought this, because they were not. Okay, now let's go on to the funding that they don't seem to be able to understand. If you look at the initiative right here, if you actually go to the campaign finance, the overview of the campaign finance, it does say here, 2 committees are registered to oppose the measure. Save Our Security, No on I-1639, and Washingtonians and the National Rifle Association for Freedom 2018. The committees reported $116,500 in donations. That is a lot of money. And $13,000 in expenditures. That means they spent $13,000 fighting this initiative. So let's go on here just a little bit further and explain those numbers and how wrong the NRA cucks actually are. Let's just make our way down here. And before we do get down here to the actual numbers, let's take a look right here at the support. If you notice, we were fighting an uphill battle here. I mean, the few $100 I spent out of my pocket helping fund some things that some local do-gooders were doing and helping participate in is nothing compared to what these people spent out of their pocket. I mean, I think I spent like a total of $400. These people were spending $1 million or $600,000 or $500,000. These are all billionaire donors who just want their way. Now, I know a lot of people love to see this as a right versus left argument, but this isn't a right left versus left or Democrat versus Republican. It's a billionaires. It's the ultra wealthy versus the people. Unfortunately, the left keeps letting themselves be convinced by the billionaires that those people actually care about them. When they don't, they just use them to promote their own agenda. And that is, they don't want people that aren't them to be armed. They want poor people to be disarmed. And unfortunately, the left is, I guess, I don't know, naive or stupid enough to go along with it. But that being said, like I said, they raised $4 million. In fact, they raised $4.11 million. And their expenditures were $4.17 million. They actually spent more than they raised. I'm not sure how that happened, but it happened. So they actually, not only did they raise a lot of money, they spent a lot of money. Now, most of the money was paid to people that they brought up from California to go out and try to trick Washingtonians into signing these misleading signature petitions. So that's where most of the money went, but they spent pretty much everything they raised. So now let's go down and look to what was raised by the 2 companies that were opposing, the 2 organizations that were opposing the ballot initiative. Save Our Security, the No on I-1639, they raised $13,000 in cash, $5,000 in-kind contributions. And they spent $11,485. They actually spent a little more since then, and that's actually added into the number over here. The Washingtonians and the National Rifle Association, well, they raised $100,000. Now, people see cash contributions here, and they think that means the NRA contributed that much. No, the NRA locally raised that much money from local people here in the state of Washington. They brought in $100,000 in donations to fight the initiative. But when you go over and look to see what they actually spent, zero. They spent nothing. In fact, if you add up the total donations that were raised was $118,000. And we know that $100,000 of that was NRA. So that means there were $18,000 in small donations, people who brought money in and spent money, like my $400. Those are added to the 11,000 something that the No on I-1639 spent, and total, what they spent, what everyone spent, including No on I-1639, plus little people like me and other people that aren't big enough to make the list, we spent a total of $16,485. Well, with the $100,000 that the NRA brought in, that's not even touching that. In fact, it leaves like $1,000, $1,500 left over. So where did the $100,000 go? That's what you got to ask yourself. Where did this $100,000 right here that they raised go? Because they didn't spend it. They didn't spend it fighting this fight. So that's what you have to ask yourself. Where did that money go? Because it didn't get spent. The NRA did not use that money to defend the rights of law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment right. They did not spend that money doing that. So when you want to defend the NRA, when you want to be a cuck for Wayne LaPierre and Chris Cox, people that have never held a gun other than a photo op and do nothing but sell your rights constantly for profit to fund their extravagant salaries, if you want to defend them and you want to try to use numbers, at least be able to read and understand those numbers.